Improving Your Life's Philosophy by Rohn. What makes us different from all other life forms? It's the ability to think, it's the ability to form our own personal philosophy. You would be surprised how effective you can become in many areas if you will. Just make the arrangements to get help when you need it. A patient man is always richer than an impatient one, even if the patient man has less money. Why? The patient man can always afford to wait. Making the most of your life is unusual. That's why you need to develop some unusual habits to earn outstanding rewards. Setting your sail. Forming and refining your personal philosophy of life is a process that never ends. It started way back when you were a child. The schools you attended, your parents, your experiences, all of these factors have played a role in developing your philosophy. Your personal philosophy is the major factor of your destiny. I used to think that circumstances ordered my life. If someone would have remarked to me when I was 25, "Mr. Rohn, you're not doing well. You've got pennies in your pocket, creditors calling, nothing in the bank. You are behind on your promises to your family. You live in America and have every reason to do well, yet things are going badly for you. What is wrong here?" It would not have occurred to me to blame my philosophy. I found it much easier to blame the government, to blame the tax problem. I used to say taxes are too high. The top tax rate when I first started paying taxes was 91%. Back then, when your income reached a certain level, all the money you earned beyond that was taxed at 91%. Now the top rate is half that, and people are still saying that taxes are too high. But if they've decreased so substantially, how can they be too high? I threw all my old excuses away. It seems that some people have found them, though. And they've picked them up, dusted them off, and they're using the excuses themselves. I used to blame the traffic, the weather, all sorts of circumstances. I found it easier to blame the company than to blame myself. I used to say, if this is all they pay, how do they expect me to do well? I figured that my future was going to be tied to what was going on around me, the economy, interest rates, retail prices. I had a limitless supply of things to blame until Mr. Schoaf taught me where the problem really resided, in my own personal philosophy. What makes us different than dogs and birds and cats and spiders and alligators? What makes us different than all other life forms? It's the ability to think, the ability to use our mind, the ability to process ideas and not just operate by instinct. It's the ability to form our own personal philosophy. In the winter, geese can only fly south. Human beings are not like geese. We can fly south if we want, but we can also turn around, go north, go east, go west. We can determine the entire process of our own life. We do that by the way we think. We do that by exercising our mind. We do that by processing ideas and coming up with a better philosophy, a better strategy for our life. We can set goals for the future and formulate plans to achieve those goals. All this comes from developing our philosophy. A philosophy helps us to process our options. Is it possible to take the raw material we've all been given and turn it into something spectacular and unique that no other person can do? The answer is yes. But you cannot even see all these options, let alone know what to do with them, unless you start using your mind to come up with ideas to strengthen your philosophy. That is a major challenge of life. Each person's personal philosophy is like the set of a sail. If you want to trim a better sail, you don't need a better economy. If you blame the economy and the marketplace, the schools and the teachers, the sermons and the preachers, the company and its policy, what else is there? When some people get through with their blame list, there's nothing left to blame but themselves. It is a colossal mistake to blame the only things you've got to work with. You know you can't change the seasons, you've got to take them as they come. What can you change to make your life work better? You must start with your philosophy. Once I got rid of all my old excuses and started examining the real problem, my personal philosophy, my life exploded into change. My bank account changed immediately. My income changed immediately. My whole life instantly took on a new look. The early results from making these philosophical changes felt so good that I never stopped the process from that day forward. Once you set a better sail by refining your philosophy, your whole life's direction can start to change from that day forward. You don't have to wait until tomorrow. You don't have to wait until next month. You don't have to wait until the conditions are perfect. You can start this whole process immediately. I recommend it. Each person's personal philosophy is like a set of sails. Once you set a better sail by modifying your philosophy, your whole life's direction will change. Getting help when you need it. One of the most crucial prerequisites for forming a life philosophy is knowing yourself, your weaknesses as well as your strengths. A real-world philosophy recognizes that in order to take full responsibility for yourself, you'll probably need some help from others. You may know the areas where you can get by with little or no assistance, but what about those areas where help is truly needed? You can discover these areas by simply analyzing your habits. If, for example, you're not good at keeping records, get someone to do it for you. If you have promised yourself that you are going to keep records or balance your checkbook, and you haven't done it for a few years, it looks like you aren't that kind of person, nor are you likely to become that kind of person. You may say, "No, I'm really going to do it this time," but I would suggest that a few years is long enough. Don't promise yourself any more. Just say, maybe the smart thing to do is to get someone to do this for me. You would be surprised at how effective you could become in many areas if you would just make the arrangements to get help when you need it. Some years ago, my office came to the conclusion that I was a poor courier. It used to be that if I was going someplace, say to San Francisco, someone would ask me to deliver a check while I was there. I would say, "Sure. No problem." Put the check in my pocket, and fly off to San Francisco. Guess when I would next hear about the check? When my dry cleaners found it. The next time, my office would say, "This document has to go to San Jose. Will you be sure to give it to them this time?" I'd say, "Of course. You can count on me this time. I'm not flaky." So I put the document in my briefcase and head off for San Jose. Guess what? It would still be in my briefcase when I got back to the office the following week. So there is a saying now in my office: don't give the chairman anything. He's good at some things, but he's a poor courier. Make other arrangements. And that is my point. There is nothing wrong with admitting that you just aren't going to do certain things as long as you are clever enough to make the arrangements to have them done. I would call that a real-world philosophy. It's much better than continually promising that you will do something when the chances are good that you won't. Enlisting the power of time. Let's suppose that you have been hard at work on developing a strong philosophy. You know exactly what you want to accomplish in life. You know that you want to get a good education, have a successful career, make some profitable investments, raise a family, and have your children turn out well. You may even know how you want to go about achieving these objectives. You may have it all planned out in great detail. All that is very important. All that is very good. But is it enough? I'm afraid not. Let's also suppose that there's a vast, hugely powerful force that nobody can withstand, and this immense force is always active and in furious motion. It never rests. It's like a slowly flowing river that can eventually carve the Grand Canyon out of solid rock. But that comparison doesn't really do it justice. The force I'm talking about is much more formidable than any river, ocean, glacier, or another natural phenomenon. In trying to achieve your life's goals, would you prefer to fight against this the force that has the odds overwhelmingly in its favor, or would you rather enlist this great power for your cause and make the inevitable work for you instead of against you? Take your time before answering. Think it over. By the way, the great power I'm talking about is time. Time is the mightiest force in the world, even the universe. Of course, the answer to the question I posed is very obvious. Why would you ever choose to fight time when you could have time on your side? Who wouldn't want to harness the great river of time that flows through all of life? Why wouldn't you want to use the power of time to generate power in every area of your existence, to turn the turbines of your hopes and dreams, to charge your every aspiration with lightning bolts of electricity? There is only one way: make time work for you, not against you, patience. There's a type of person who undertakes every activity out of the desire to achieve a goal. He prepares food to eat it, not just for the fun of being in the kitchen. He starts a business to make money. He exercises to get in shape. I'm sure that some of these people are very successful, and they are certainly highly organized. But a person with a truly refined philosophy sees success as an adventure, not as a point with an estimated time of arrival. The latter approach is impatient thinking. Impatient thinking can lead a person into some very big mistakes. When you are always looking somewhere else, whether it's down the road, up toward the top of the mountain, or off toward the left field fence where you're hoping to hit that grand slam home run, you often miss what's under your very own nose. You never know when you're going to come across a book or article that will provide a piece of information that can transform your life. One thing is certain. However, the book you don't read isn't going to help. And it's the same with meeting people. You never know who is going to be able to teach you exactly what you need to know. Even if you don't need to know it now, you might need to know it at some point in the future. That might not be for 15 years, but it just might be in 15 minutes, too. The substance and strength of patience. A patient man is always richer than an impatient one, even if the patient man has less money. What do I mean by that statement? Well, riches and wealth can take other forms besides dollars and cents. In what sense is the patient man richer? The answer is actually very simple. A patient man is always richer than the impatient one because the patient man can always afford to wait. The patient man is never desperate. The patient man has time to spare, while the man in a hurry is always on the verge of bankruptcy as far as time is concerned. In any situation you can think of, impatience is a source of weakness and fear, while patience represents substance and strength. And here's another reason why patience gives the person who has it an incalculable advantage over those who don't have it. It gives him deeper insight into himself and others, which is a mark of philosophical refinement. If you can only see the short term, if you think only in terms of the here and now, then you are stuck in one place. You can't judge distances. You live in a world that's flat and two-dimensional. In other words, the impatient person lacks all sense of perspective. Perspective lets you measure your current plans against things that have already occurred and against your desires and aspirations for the future. Then and now. Here and there, near and far, need and know, watch and wait, these are the dual optics that allow the patient man to see in stereo. The nearsighted person sees only the present, the fantasizer sees only an imaginary future and, more likely than not, trips over his mistakes trying to get there. Patience enables you to see the big picture. It helps you to make the most of today while building a better tomorrow. For that reason, it's one of the most valuable equities of all, one that you should make every effort to acquire. The payoff will be worth it. The key to victory. Although you won't find this discussed in many history books, one of the most important events of World War II actually took place right here in the United States a few months before the attack on Pearl Harbor. At that time, the U.S. Army held a series of massive military exercises in Louisiana. These exercises were designed to assess the preparedness of the American forces for participation in the war. As it happened, those war games revealed some glaring deficiencies. It quickly became obvious to our military commanders that if America were drawn into the war, as many believed it would be, there would have to be a long period of rebuilding and modernization. This would have to take place while American forces were fighting all over the world with inferior and outdated equipment, and that's exactly what happened. It took almost 3 years of patience and hard work and sacrifice before the U.S. war machine was brought up to modern standards. But President Franklin Roosevelt and generals such as Eisenhower and MacArthur knew that the wait would be well worthwhile and that, once the task was completed, victory would be assured. On the other side of the Atlantic, the story was very much the same. Winston Churchill knew that England would have to endure months and years of bombing and threats of invasion, but he also knew that time was on his side. With great patience and courage, the British people waited out bombing raids by planes and rockets. At last, the tide began to turn. The world realized that patience and endurance would defeat the fearful aggressor. The city of Leningrad was also under siege for more than a year, but the Russians knew the value of patience perhaps better than anyone. More than a century earlier, after all, they had let their bitter climate and the sheer size of their land defeat the French armies under Napoleon. The same natural forces eventually prevailed against the new invader. It was the patient countries, the United States, England, and Russia, who won the Second World War against enemies who banked on surprise and the hope of a quick victory. The power of ratios. If you want to develop an informed philosophy of life, it is important to understand the power of ratios. This power can be explained in a simple sentence: if you do something often enough, you'll get a ratio of good results to bad results. The understanding of ratios is particularly essential in the leadership arena, because if you're leading others, you've got to have some means to evaluate their performance, as well as your own. What do I mean by ratios? Let's say you're in sales, and you have just joined a new company as a representative of their products or services. You talk to 10 prospects. 9 of them say, "No, I wouldn't care for any." One says, "Yes, I'll take some." This is your opening ratio, 1 out of 10. Is this a good ratio? It all depends on what you're selling. Any ratio can be a good ratio, however, if you keep this in mind. Once a ratio starts, it tends to continue. If you talk to 10 more prospects, chances are excellent that you'll get another sale. If you talk to 10 more beyond that, chances are excellent you'll get a third sale. It's uncanny. I don't even know how it works, but it's less important to know how it works than it is to know that you can count on it. Understanding the process will save you a lot of frustration. Once you know that your ratio is pretty well established at 1 out of 10, you can start to compete. Testing your skill against someone else's skill is valuable. What someone else can do is a good benchmark for what you might do if you stretch yourself. In that sense, competition is a very healthy pursuit. If you decide that you'd like to compete with the top salesman in your company, the one who has been there the longest, you may feel like you've taken on an impossible task. That doesn't have to be the case, however, if you use the power of ratios. Let's say the top salesman is Pete, and he is so good that he's built a ratio of 9 sales out of 10 calls. You have a 30-day contest with Pete to see who can get the most prospects to buy. Even though your ratio is only 1 out of 10, you can win. You may say, "Well, I've only been here a short time, I can't get 9 out of 10, so how could I possibly beat him?" It might not be easy, but it would be very simple. During the month, while Pete talks to 10 prospects and gets 9 sales, you will talk to 100 and get 10 sales. At the end of those 30 days, Pete will have 9. And you will have 10. You beat him. Isn't that clever? You see, you can make up in numbers what you lack in skill. After 30 days, you may be fairly exhausted, but you've definitely accomplished a lot more than you thought you could. You've been a worthy competitor. The key is to be bright enough to understand ratios. Here's the second clue about ratios: they can be increased. You may talk to 10. Get 1, talk to 10, get 1, talk to 10, get 1, talk to 10, get 2. What is it about that fourth time you talk to 10 that enables you to get 2 instead of 1? You've put in the time and effort, and you're getting better. Anybody who tries to can get better. All you have to do is play the numbers. Your brain is as functional as anybody else's. Your chances are as good. All you've got to do is use the power of ratios and put out the extra effort. That's how you do ordinary things extraordinarily well. An intellectual feast. Where do you go for your intellectual feast? Pity the man who has a favorite restaurant but not a favorite author. He's picked out a favorite place to feed his body, but he doesn't have a favorite place to feed his mind. One way to feed your mind and educate your philosophy is through the writings of influential people. Maybe you can't meet the person, but you can read his or her books. Churchill is gone, but we still have his books. Aristotle is gone, but we still have his ideas. Search libraries for books and programs. Search magazines. Search documentaries. They are full of opportunities for intellectual feasting. In addition to reading and listening, you also need a chance to do some talking and sharing. I have some people in my life who help me with important life questions, who assist me in refining my own philosophy, weighing my values, and pondering questions about success and lifestyle. We all need association with people of substance to provide influence concerning major issues such as society, money, enterprise, family, government, love, friendship, culture, taste, opportunity, and community. Philosophy is mostly influenced by ideas, and ideas are mostly influenced by education, and education is mostly influenced by the people with whom we associate. One of the great fortunes of my life was to be around Mr. Schoaf those 5 years. During that time he shared with me at dinner, during airline flights, at business conferences, in private conversations, in groups. He gave me many ideas that enabled me to make small daily adjustments in my philosophy and activities. Those daily changes, some very slight but very important, soon added up to weighty sums. A big part of the lesson was having Mr. Schoaf repeat the ideas over and over. You just can't hear the fundamentals of life philosophy too often. They are the greatest form of nutrition, the building blocks for a well-developed mind. The pursuit of mental development. It's easy, when you finally find yourself in a good job, to stop pursuing mental development. Have you heard about the accelerated learning curve? From birth up until the time we are about 18, our learning curve is dramatic, and our capacity to learn during this period is just staggering. We learn a tremendous amount very fast. We learn language, culture, history, science, mathematics. Everything. For some people, the accelerated learning process will continue on. But for most, it levels off when they get their first job. If there are no more exams to take, if there's no demand to get out paper and pencil, why read any more books? Of course, you will learn some things by experience. Just getting out there. Sometimes doing it wrong and sometimes doing it right, you will learn. But can you imagine what would happen if you kept up an accelerated learning curve all The rest of your life? Can you imagine what you could learn to do, the skills you could develop, the capacities you could have? So here's what I'm asking you to do. Be that unusual person who keeps up his learning curve. Making the most of your life is not usual. It's unusual. You need to develop some unusual habits to earn the outstanding rewards. A friend of mine said, "A standard education will get you standard results." You want a lot more than standard results. You need to become a lot more than a standard person. Become a student of good ideas, wherever they can be found. Always be on the lookout for a good idea, a business idea, a product idea, a service idea, an idea for personal improvement. Every new idea will help to refine your philosophy. Your philosophy will guide your life, and your life will unfold with distinction and pleasure. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe for content like this.